I lay in bed every night staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life turned upside down so fast. 6 years with Amanda, 3 years trying for a baby, and 2 rounds of IVF later, we finally got the news we wanted. I remember her smile when she showed me the positive test. I thought our struggle was over, until I saw those text messages. My wife had swapped our embryo for her ex's because he had better genes. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. Before I tell you how my perfect life shattered overnight, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and hit subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine. I never thought my life would take such a dramatic turn. Looking back, everything seemed so perfect before it all fell apart. I was a dedicated software engineer working for one of the major tech companies in Seattle. My career was thriving and I was climbing the corporate ladder faster than I had anticipated. The long hours and challenging projects were worth it because I was building toward something greater than myself. I was building toward a future. That future became clearer the night I met Amanda at my college friend's housewarming party 6 years ago. I remember standing by the snack table awkwardly trying to balance a plate of chips and dip when she walked up beside me. Her smile lit up the room, and when she laughed at my terrible joke about binary code, I knew there was something special about her. She was not only beautiful with her long auburn hair and bright green eyes, but also incredibly intelligent. She worked as a marketing executive for a pharmaceutical company and had this way of explaining complex concepts that made them seem simple. What sealed the deal for me was when she talked about wanting a big family someday. Growing up as an only child, I had always dreamed of having a house filled with laughter and children. Finding someone who shared that dream felt like fate. Our romance moved quickly. We dated for exactly 1 year before I proposed on the same day we met at the same friend's apartment by the same snack table. Amanda cried as she said yes, and within 6 months we were married in a beautiful ceremony with all our friends and family present. After settling into married life, we decided to start trying for a baby. Both of us were approaching 30, and we felt ready for the next chapter. The first few months were exciting. Each time Amanda's period was due, we would hold our breath in anticipation. But as months turned into a year with no success, that excitement slowly morphed into anxiety. I started noticing changes in our relationship. Sex became less about connection and more about timing. Romantic spontaneity was replaced with ovulation calendars and basal body temperature charts. The pressure was mounting, and I could feel Amanda becoming more frustrated with each passing month. Finally, after a year of trying, we decided to see a fertility specialist. The testing process was thorough and honestly a bit invasive. When the results came back, the doctor explained that I had low sperm motility, which was making conception difficult. Amanda, on the other hand, had normal fertility levels. I remember feeling a deep sense of shame and inadequacy when I heard the news. It was my fault we could not conceive naturally. Amanda squeezed my hand when we got the diagnosis and assured me that it did not matter to her. She loved me for who I was, and we would find a way to have our family no matter what. Her support meant everything to me during that difficult time. The next year was filled with more tests, lifestyle changes, and alternative treatments. I quit drinking, started taking various supplements, changed my diet, wore looser underwear, and even tried acupuncture. Nothing worked. Each month brought the same disappointment, and I could see it was taking a toll on both of us. After 2 years of unsuccessful attempts, we sat down and had a serious conversation about our options. Adoption was on the table, but we both admitted we wanted to try IVF first if we could afford it. The cost was steep, especially since my insurance only covered a small portion, but we decided our dream of having a family was worth the sacrifice. We cut back on expenses, took on extra work, and even postponed a planned vacation to Japan to save money for the procedure. Finally, after 6 months of aggressive saving, we had enough for our first round of IVF. The IVF process was even more grueling than I had anticipated. Amanda had to give herself daily hormone injections. I tried to help, but my hands would shake so badly that she ended up doing it herself. The medications made her emotional and uncomfortable, but she pushed through it all with determination. The egg retrieval procedure went well, with the doctor collecting several viable eggs. My contribution to the process was considerably less invasive, but no less stressful. When the embryologist called to tell us they had successfully fertilized 5 eggs, we felt a glimmer of hope. After the embryo transfer, we spent 2 weeks in excruciating anticipation. Amanda took the pregnancy test at the clinic, and we were devastated to learn it had not worked. All that physical, emotional, and financial investment had led to nothing. That night we held each other and cried until we fell asleep. Despite the failure, we decided to try again. We still had 4 frozen embryos, and the doctor assured us that many couples succeed on their second or third attempt. So we regrouped, saved more money, and 3 months later we were back at the clinic for another transfer. This time we tried not to get our hopes up too high. We went about our regular lives as much as possible during the 2-week wait. Then one morning I woke up to find Amanda sitting on the edge of the bed, tears in her eyes, and a pregnancy test in her hand. It was positive. After 3 long years of trying, we were finally going to have a baby. The day Amanda showed me the positive pregnancy test was one of the happiest moments of my life. We spent the entire weekend planning and dreaming about our future as parents. I immediately started researching the safest cribs and car seats, while Amanda began sketching designs for the nursery. We decided on a space theme with stars and planets on the walls. I even ordered a telescope mobile to hang over the crib, thinking about all the nights I would spend teaching our child about the constellations. The first few prenatal appointments went perfectly. Hearing our baby's heartbeat for the first time brought me to tears. The doctor said everything looked normal, and Amanda was in excellent health for someone in her first trimester. We decided to wait until the 12-week mark to announce the pregnancy to family and friends wanting to be cautious after our long journey to get here. Around week 10 of the pregnancy, I began noticing subtle changes in Amanda's behavior. It started with little things like how she would take her phone with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she would quickly lock her screen or switch to another app. At first, I dismissed it as pregnancy anxiety or her looking up symptoms she did not want to worry me about. Then came the phone calls. Amanda would step outside to take calls from a contact saved as pregnancy support. These calls seemed to happen at odd hours, sometimes late in the evening. When I asked her about them, she explained that it was a support group for IVF mothers, and one of the members was having a difficult time adjusting to pregnancy. I had no reason to doubt her, especially given how compassionate Amanda had always been. As the pregnancy progressed, Amanda started attending what she called pregnancy support group meetings in person. These meetings were always scheduled at times when I had late work calls or other commitments. She would return from these meetings looking refreshed and happy, often talking about how valuable the support was. I was glad she had found a community of women going through the same experience, even if it meant she was out of the house more often than I would have liked. Despite these small concerns, I was still over the moon about becoming a father. I had started reading parenting books during my lunch breaks and had signed us up for birthing classes that would start in the second trimester. Every night I would talk to Amanda's growing belly, telling our baby about my day and how much I already loved them. Everything changed during week 14 of the pregnancy. I was supposed to be on a 3-day business trip to San Francisco, but the client meeting ended a day early. Instead of staying the extra night as planned, I decided to surprise Amanda by coming home unexpectedly. I picked up her favorite dinner from that Italian place she loved and headed home excited to spend the evening together. When I arrived, Amanda was in the shower. I set the food on the dining table and was about to call out to her when I noticed her phone on the coffee table screen lit up with an incoming text. I had never been the type to invade my wife's privacy, but something about the preview of the message caught my eye. It was from someone named Jackson, and the visible portion read, "How did Monte react to the ultrasound? Jackson." The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I could not place it immediately. Curiosity and an unsettling feeling in my stomach led me to do something I had never done before. I picked up her phone. To my surprise, it was not locked. The full message read, "How did Monte react to the ultrasound? Does he suspect anything about the baby not being his?" My hands began to shake as I scrolled up through the conversation. What I found destroyed me. Jackson was Amanda's ex-boyfriend from college, the one she had dated for 3 years before meeting me. According to the messages, they had reconnected about a year ago and had been in regular contact ever since. But that was not even the worst part. As I continued reading their exchanges, I discovered the horrifying truth: Amanda had secretly arranged with Jackson to use his sperm instead of mine during the IVF procedure. They had planned this for months, with Amanda telling Jackson that he had better genes than me due to his athletic ability, intelligence, and superior family health history. One message from Amanda read, "Monte's genetic material is not what I want for my child. With his family history of heart disease and his learning disabilities as a child, I cannot risk passing those on. Your genes are simply better. Our baby deserves the best start in life." I felt physically ill as I read message after message discussing me as though I were some defective breeding animal. They had gone into graphic detail about my shortcomings as a genetic donor, with Amanda even sending Jackson copies of my medical records from the fertility clinic. He had responded with jokes about how his superior swimmers would create a perfect child. Even more devastating was the discovery that Jackson had financially contributed to the IVF procedure. He had transferred money to a separate account Amanda had opened without my knowledge. They had also been meeting regularly during her supposed support group meetings, planning their future and discussing possibilities for after the baby was born. The most recent messages revealed that Amanda was considering how to eventually introduce Jackson as the real father once the child was older, suggesting that they might naturally reconnect as friends so Jackson could be in the child's life. There was even discussion about the possibility of Amanda and I divorcing in the future, allowing them to be together officially. I do not remember much about the next hour. I found myself sitting on the floor of our living room, Amanda's phone still in my hand, feeling as though my entire life had been a lie. The shower had stopped running, but I could not bring myself to move. When Amanda walked into the living room wrapped in a towel, her smile quickly faded when she saw me holding her phone. "Monte, what are you doing with my phone?" she asked, her voice higher than normal. I could not speak. I simply held up the phone, showing her the conversation with Jackson. Her face went pale, and in that moment I knew that everything I had read was true. My wife, the woman I had loved and supported through years of fertility treatments, had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. The silence in our living room was deafening. Amanda stood, frozen water still dripping from her hair, staring at me with a mixture of shock and what looked like guilt in her eyes. I could barely look at her. "How could you do this to me?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Amanda approached slowly, reaching for her phone. "Monte, I can explain. It is not what it looks like." But we both knew it was exactly what it looked like. The evidence was right there in black and white, hundreds of messages plotting one of the most intimate betrayals imaginable. "Do not lie to me anymore," I said, pulling the phone away from her reach. "I need to know everything right now." Instead of immediately confronting her, I decided I needed to understand the full extent of the deception. I told Amanda I needed space and left the house, checking into a nearby hotel. That night I called a lawyer friend for advice, explaining the situation and asking about my legal rights. The news was not good. Since I was married to Amanda at the time of conception and would be listed as the father on the birth certificate, I would legally be considered the child's father, despite not being biologically related. Fighting this would be a complicated legal battle. Over the next few days, I conducted my own investigation. I hired a private investigator who confirmed that Amanda had indeed been visiting Jackson's apartment during her supposed support group meetings. Credit card statements showed dinners at romantic restaurants on nights she claimed to be with her pregnancy support group. I even found receipts for gifts she had purchased for him, using our joint account. Taking my lawyer's advice, I installed security cameras in our home's common areas before returning. I needed evidence of her confessions for what would likely become a contentious divorce. When I finally returned home 3 days later, Amanda was beside herself. She had been calling and texting constantly, alternating between apologies, explanations, and surprisingly anger that I had invaded her privacy. I remained calm as I walked through the door, determined to get the full truth. "We need to talk," I said as I sat down across from her at our dining table. Amanda started with denial, claiming I had misinterpreted the messages and that Jackson was just an old friend she had reconnected with. When I presented her with the evidence from the private investigator, including photos of her entering his apartment building, her story changed. Okay, yes, I have been seeing Jackson, but not romantically, she insisted. He has been supporting me through this pregnancy because you have been so busy with work. I pulled out printed copies of their text messages, highlighting the parts about swapping my sperm for his during the IVF procedure. And this. Was this also just friendship? Finally, the facade cracked. Amanda's eyes welled with tears as she admitted to what she had done. Her explanation was even more hurtful than I had imagined. I still love you, Monte, I do, she said, reaching for my hand, which I pulled away. But when we found out about your fertility issues and genetic predispositions, I started having doubts. I want the best for our child, the absolute best. Jackson has perfect health. His family has no history of disease. He was a college athlete and his IQ is in the top percentile. I listened in disbelief as my wife essentially told me I was genetically inferior, that the child we had planned for years would be better off without my DNA. So all those nights you held me when I felt like less of a man because of my fertility issues, I said, my voice shaking, you were actually agreeing with me, thinking I was not good enough to father your child. It is not like that, she insisted. I chose you as my husband, as my life partner. I want to raise this baby with you. Does it really matter whose DNA the baby has? We are still going to be parents together. Her attempts to minimize the betrayal only made it worse. She had taken away my choice, my agency in one of the most important decisions of my life. She had conspired with an ex-boyfriend behind my back, used my money to finance another man's child, and planned to trick me into raising it while they maintained a relationship. This is not about the baby's genes, I finally said. This is about trust. This is about you going behind my back to make a life-altering decision without my consent. This is about you and Jackson laughing at me in your texts, mocking my defective genes. Amanda's tears flowed freely now. I was going to tell you eventually, after the baby was born and you had already fallen in love with him or her. That was when I realized the true depth of her deception. This was never going to be a one-time lie. She had planned to keep me in the dark forever, or at least until it suited her to reveal the truth. I need some air, I said, standing up abruptly. Do not call me. Do not text me. I need to figure out what I am going to do. I left the house again, this time driving aimlessly around the city. My mind was a tornado of emotions. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak, and beneath it all a strange sense of clarity beginning to emerge. By morning, sitting in a 24-hour diner with a cold cup of coffee, I had made my decision. Just as Amanda had decided to swap out my genetic contribution without my consent, I would swap her out of my life without hers. I returned home with a calmness that seemed to unsettle Amanda. She had clearly been up all night, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Monte, please say something, she begged as I walked through the door. I have made my decision, I said quietly. Just as you chose to swap our embryo for one with better genes, I am choosing to swap you out of my life. I am filing for divorce. The shock on her face was almost satisfying. For once, she was the one caught off guard, the one having her life decided for her without input. You cannot be serious, she whispered. What about the baby that you and Jackson created, the one that you have already decided I have no biological right to? That baby is your responsibility now, and his. You made this choice, Amanda. Now you get to live with the consequences. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings and paperwork. I had my lawyer draw up divorce papers that explicitly mentioned the paternity fraud as grounds for dissolution of marriage. When Amanda was served, the reality of the situation finally seemed to hit her. She called me frantically, begging for a second chance and claiming that what she had done was out of love for our future child. I remained resolute. There was no going back from this level of betrayal. I moved out of our home and into a temporary apartment near my office. The familiar surroundings of the house we had shared felt tainted by her deception. Every corner held memories that were now called into question. Had she been thinking about Jackson when we picked out that couch? Had she been comparing me to him when we painted the nursery? Of course, Amanda tried to control the narrative with our friends and family. She told people we were separating due to the stress of the pregnancy and my inability to cope with the changes. Some believed her, at least initially, but I refused to be painted as the villain in this story. After consulting with my lawyer, I decided to reveal the truth to our closest circle. I did not do it out of spite, but out of self-preservation. I could not heal if I was also carrying the burden of her lies. The reactions were mixed. Some were shocked into silence. Others expressed outrage on my behalf. A few suggested I reconsider the divorce for the sake of the unborn child. My parents were devastated. They had been so excited about becoming grandparents after years of waiting. Learning that the child would not be their biological grandchild and under such circumstances was heartbreaking for them. My father, usually stoic and reserved, wept when I told him. My mother, always the practical one, immediately shifted to concern about my well-being and how I was coping. The legal battle over our assets was complicated by the pregnancy. Amanda argued that she needed to stay in the house for the baby's sake. My lawyer countered with evidence of her affair with Jackson and her paternity fraud. When the judge learned the full story, especially the part about Amanda and Jackson using my money to finance the IVF procedure with his sperm, the ruling was largely in my favor. Within a month of my discovery, Amanda had moved in with Jackson. Apparently, their plan to gradually introduce him as the father had been accelerated by circumstances. Seeing them together in public for the first time was surreal. They were already playing house shopping for baby items together, her bump now visibly showing under her clothes. I spiraled into depression for a while. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I questioned everything about our relationship. Had she ever loved me? Was I just a stable provider while she maintained feelings for Jackson? Had there been other lies I had never discovered? Therapy became my lifeline. My therapist helped me process the complex emotions of being deceived in such a profound way. We talked about the anger, the grief for the child I thought would be mine, and the loss of the future I had planned. Slowly, I began to see that this was not a reflection of my worth, but rather of Amanda's character. Support came from unexpected places. Colleagues who I had barely spoken to outside of work reached out with offers of help. Old friends I had lost touch with during my marriage resurfaced with invitations and distractions. Most surprisingly, Amanda's sister Jessica contacted me to apologize for her sister's actions. She had always been close with Amanda but could not condone what she had done. Her support meant more than she knew. 6 months after discovering the truth, I sold our house. Dividing the assets was painful but necessary. I watched as movers packed up the furniture we had chosen together, the books we had shared, the life we had built. The nursery with its half-painted star mural was the hardest room to empty. Even though the child would not have been biologically mine, I had already loved them. That was perhaps the cruelest part of Amanda's deception. She had not just robbed me of biological fatherhood, but also of the emotional connection I had formed with the baby I thought was mine. With the divorce finalized and no longer tied to Seattle, I requested a transfer to my company's office in Austin. The fresh start in a new city was exactly what I needed. The change of scenery helped clear my head, and the distance from the places that held memories of Amanda allowed me to begin healing in earnest. In Austin, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I joined a rock climbing gym, took up photography again, and made an effort to meet new people. I also found a support group for men who had experienced similar betrayals. Listening to their stories helped me realize I was not alone, and sharing mine helped others feel less isolated in their pain. About a year after moving to Austin, I met Sarah at a friend's barbecue. She was a kindergarten teacher with a quick wit and genuine warmth that drew me in immediately. Our relationship developed slowly. I was cautious, the wounds from Amanda's betrayal still tender. Sarah was patient, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. When I finally told her the full story of my marriage, she listened without judgment. "That must have been incredibly painful," she said simply. No platitudes, no rushed assurances that she would never do the same. Just acknowledgement of my pain and space for me to feel it. That was when I knew she was someone I could trust. Around that time, news of Amanda and Jackson reached me through mutual friends. Their relationship was struggling under the weight of a newborn and the reality that had replaced the fantasy. Jackson had apparently not been prepared for the responsibilities of fatherhood despite his superior genes. Hearing this brought me no joy, only a sense of grim vindication and concern for the innocent child caught in the middle. As months turned into years, I found myself thinking about Amanda and the betrayal less and less. The sharp pain had dulled to an occasional ache, a cautionary tale rather than an open wound. I realized that her choices were never about me and my perceived genetic shortcomings. They were about her own selfishness, her inability to honor commitments, and her willingness to deceive someone who loved her completely. The greatest lesson from this painful chapter was learning to trust my instincts again. Looking back, there had been signs of Amanda's duplicity that I had chosen to ignore. Small inconsistencies in her stories, brief moments of disconnect, a certain guardedness that I had attributed to the stress of fertility treatments. Now I knew better than to dismiss those quiet warnings from my gut. My relationship with Sarah continued to grow, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. Unlike with Amanda, there were no secrets between us, no hidden agendas, no manipulation disguised as love. With Sarah, I rediscovered what genuine partnership felt like. Today, I can honestly say that I am grateful for the path my life has taken, despite the pain that marked the journey. Had Amanda not betrayed me, I might have spent my life with someone who did not truly value me for who I was. I might never have found the authentic connection I now share with Sarah. Sometimes the most painful betrayals lead us exactly where we need to be, even if we cannot see it at the time. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that eventually led you to something better? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming betrayal and finding strength. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the hardest swaps in life turn out to be the best decisions we ever make.